Welcome back to the deep dive. When we first got your request for a deep dive into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we were kind of intrigued. I
Hmm.
mean, we've all seen the show, enjoyed the action, but to go academic with it, that's a whole new perspective.
It is.
We've got some really interesting research lined up for you today, exploring some of the deeper themes and symbolism the show uses.
Right. It's really fascinating how the Falcon and the Winter Soldier uses this, superhero genre to delve into some really complex issues. The academic papers that we have here,
Yeah.
they really unpack the show's exploration of trauma, heroism, and especially its nuanced take on systemic racism.
Yeah, it's not just about the cool fight scenes and witty banter.
Yeah.
There's a whole other layer of meaning there. For example, one of the papers focuses on the visual language that the show uses to underscore its messages about race and representation.
Exactly. It points out how certain scenes are framed,
Hmm.
the color palettes that they used, even the costuming choices, all contribute to a deeper commentary on the historical treatment of Black people in America.
Oh, that's so interesting. Makes you think about how much thought and intention went into crafting those visuals.
Absolutely. And it's something that a lot of viewers might not even consciously pick up on, but it definitely adds to the impact of the show's message.
So before we go any further, let's quickly set the stage for those who might not have rewatched the show recently. It takes place after Avengers Endgame, and we see Sam Wilson, the Falcon, and Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, trying to find their place in a world without Captain America.
And it's not just about filling the void that's left by Steve Rogers, is it? The show really uses that absence to explore these complexities of legacy and what it means to be a hero in a world grappling with difficult questions about identity and responsibility.
One of the papers specifically talks about how the show contrasts Sam and Bucky's journeys to highlight the different challenges that they face.
Yes. And it argues that the show brilliantly uses those contrasting experiences to explore these complexities of race and identity, particularly in relation to taking on the mantle of Captain America.
Which, if you remember, isn't exactly a straightforward decision for Sam. He wrestles with it throughout the show, right?
It does. And that internal conflict is where the show gets really powerful.
Yeah.
The paper actually cites a specific scene where Sam is having a conversation with Isaiah Bradley, another super soldier who was experimented on and ultimately discarded by the government.
Oh, that's such a powerful scene. It really lays bare the burden of history and the weight of expectations that Sam carries as a Black man, considering taking on such a symbolic role.
Right. And the paper argues that this scene, and others like it, challenge that traditional narrative of the all-American hero by highlighting the systemic barriers and injustices that Black people have faced throughout history, even within institutions like the military.
That's a really interesting point. The show definitely doesn't shy away from showing those uncomfortable truths, does it?
Not at all. And I think that's one of the reasons that it resonated so deeply with viewers. It manages to entertain while also prompting important conversations about race and representation in a way that feels both authentic and thought-provoking.
It's interesting because, it uses the superhero genre, which is often seen as pure escapism, to tackle these real-world issues.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's using the familiar tropes of the MCU to sneak in some serious social commentary.
Exactly. It subverts those expectations in a really clever way.
Yeah.
The paper actually compares it to some classic works of literature that use allegory and symbolism to address social injustices.
Wow. So we're talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier being on par with, literary giants. That's pretty impressive.
Well, the paper argues that it shares some thematic similarities in terms of how it uses metaphor and character development to explore those complex societal issues.
That makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, Sam's struggle with taking on the shield is really a metaphor for the larger struggle for racial equality and representation, isn't it?
Precisely. And the show doesn't offer easy answers. It grapples with the nuances of these issues, showing the internal conflicts, the external pressures, and the historical baggage that Sam has to contend with.
It definitely makes you think about what it truly means to be a hero. It's not just about super strength and fighting villains. It's about confronting difficult truths and fighting for what's right, even when it's hard.
Absolutely. And the paper even draws a parallel between Sam's journey and the real-life civil rights movement, highlighting the themes of perseverance, sacrifice, and the ongoing fight for justice.
It's amazing how much depth there is to this show when you start looking at it through this analytical lens.
It's a testament to the writers and creators who clearly put a lot of thought into crafting a narrative that goes beyond simple entertainment.
Speaking of the writers, one of the other papers we have focuses on the way they use dialogue to reveal the characters' internal struggles and perspectives.
Yes. It highlights how the language used, particularly in scenes between Sam and Bucky, reflects their contrasting experiences and worldviews.
There's that great scene early on where they're talking about what it means to be Captain America, and Bucky basically says that Sam wouldn't understand because he's never had to live with the kind of guilt and trauma that Bucky has.
Right. And the paper argues that that line is so significant because it reveals how Bucky's own pain and internalized racism blinds him to Sam's experiences as a black man in America.
It's almost like he's so caught up in his own trauma that he can't see the trauma that Sam has endured. Even though it's manifested in different ways, it's a really subtle but powerful moment.
Exactly. And it speaks to the importance of empathy and understanding. It shows how our own biases and experiences can shape the way we perceive the world and the people around us.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have blind spots, and that it's important to be willing to listen and learn from each other's experiences.
The paper also points out how the show uses humor to address some of these really sensitive topics without diminishing their importance.
Oh, you mean like how Sam and Bucky constantly bicker and tease each other, even while they're dealing with all this heavy stuff?
Exactly. It's a way of injecting some levity into the narrative. But it also serves a deeper purpose.
I see what you mean. Their banter often highlights their cultural differences and misunderstandings, but it also shows how they're able to connect and grow through humor and shared experiences. It's like they're learning to speak each other's language, both literally and metaphorically.
That's a great way to put it. And it ties into the show's overall message of finding common ground and building bridges across divides.
So we've talked about how the show tackles race, representation, and trauma, but there's another theme that's really prominent, especially in Bucky's storyline, and that's redemption. One of the papers delves into the idea of Bucky seeking atonement for his past actions as the Winter Soldier.
That's a fascinating aspect of the show.
Yeah.
And the paper compares Bucky's journey to the concept of restorative justice, which emphasizes repairing harm and restoring relationships, rather than simply punishing wrongdoers.
So instead of focusing on Bucky being punished for his past crimes, the show focuses on how he's trying to make amends and heal himself and others.
Exactly. And it shows how that process is complex and challenging. Bucky has to confront the pain he's caused, take responsibility for his actions, and work to rebuild trust with those he's hurt.
It's definitely not a quick fix, is it? He has to work at it every single day.
Right. And the paper argues that this nuanced portrayal of redemption offers a hopeful message about the possibility of healing and second chances, even after committing terrible acts.
That's a really humanizing portrayal, showing that even someone who's done terrible things can still find a path to redemption.
And it's important to note that the show doesn't shy away from the fact that Bucky still faces consequences for his past actions. He's held accountable, even as he's working towards redemption.
That's an important distinction. It's not about erasing the past or pretending it didn't happen. It's about acknowledging the harm done while also recognizing the potential for growth and change.
Exactly. And it's a message that I think resonates deeply with viewers, because we all make mistakes, we all have regrets, and we all hope for the possibility of redemption in our own lives.
It's interesting how the show manages to balance those heavy themes with moments of humor and hope. It never feels preachy or overly didactic, does it?
It really doesn't. And I think that's because it's rooted in character development and relationships. We see these characters struggling, making mistakes, and ultimately growing as individuals and as a team.
One of the papers actually argues that the relationship between Sam and Bucky is the heart of the show. It says their dynamic is what drives the narrative and ultimately allows them both to evolve and find their own paths to heroism.
I completely agree. Their relationship is so complex and layered. They start off distrustful of each other, carrying baggage from their past experiences. But over time, they develop a begrudging respect that eventually blossoms into a genuine friendship.
It's like they challenge each other, force each other to confront their blind spots and grow as individuals.
Exactly. And the paper points out that their relationship is also a metaphor for the larger societal divisions that the show is exploring. Sam and Bucky represent different sides of America, different experiences, different perspectives, but they ultimately learn to work together and fight for a common goal.
It's a powerful message about the importance of bridging divides and finding common ground, even when it's difficult.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
And it's a message that feels particularly relevant in today's world.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from race and representation to trauma and redemption. But one thing we haven't really touched on is the show's ending. Without giving too much away for those who haven't seen it, how do you think the ending reflects the themes and ideas we've been discussing?
That's a great question. I think the ending is both satisfying and thought-provoking. It offers a sense of closure for the characters while also leaving some questions unanswered, inviting viewers to continue reflecting on the show's messages.
For example, Sam's final decision about the shield is a really powerful moment, isn't it?
It is, and it speaks to the complexities of legacy and responsibility. Sam ultimately chooses to embrace the mantle of Captain America, but he does it on his own terms, acknowledging the weight of history while also forging his own path.
It's a powerful statement about owning your identity and using your platform to fight for what you believe in.
Absolutely. And the ending also suggests that the fight for justice and equality is ongoing. It's not a destination, but a journey.
That's a great takeaway. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, what's the one thing you hope our listener walks away with?
I hope they gain a deeper appreciation for the show's complexity and its willingness to engage with those difficult topics. It's not just a superhero show. It's a reflection of our society and a call to action for all of us.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and engaging. And for those of you who haven't seen the show yet, we highly recommend checking it out. You might be surprised by how much it makes you think. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.